Point. My name is Carly, and I am one of the students in this class. And this is my friend, Haley.
Hi, my name is Haley Hart, and I'm a second-year grad student in the Valenti School, and we are so excited that y'all are here. So before we get started, we're actually going to talk a little bit about our class and just give y'all a background. I'm going to talk about it. All right. Is anyone here interested in grad school at all? Raise your paddles. It should be everyone. Should be everyone. We love school here. So this is actually, is she here? Oh, well, you know, why do y'all want to hear about me talk about grad school? I'm going to meet y'all there. But we're going to get started right now. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
Everyone put your hands together for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Keep clapping.
Well, that's a hot seat to come in and just start going right away. But let me thank the panel very much. I know that there's going to be a real in-depth discussion of crucial issues, and I can't thank you enough. To the Department of Homeland Security, could you raise, so I know where you are? Thank you so very much. I'm going to do this. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me? All right. There's a brother there, got his thumb up, and we've got it going. That's what I want to say. We too are America. And I want everybody in this room to put their thumbs up. Thumbs up! Thumbs up! Because what it means is that we are unified, we are strong, we are reckoning and reconciling. And I know the Department of Homeland Security will hopefully share, because I assume that he has been employed by Homeland for a number of years, sir. I don't want to, and how many years?
About 12 years.
12 years. And so he came near 9/11. And I want to just refresh your memory on some of the basic elements, and I will let the host know that I'm cutting down, Dr. Lanny, the 3-hour presentation that I have, and I'm going to abbreviate it. Oh, there's no humor in this room. But anyhow, I got on Homeland Security in the aftermath of 9/11. When we created the department and then the committee for the House and Senate. So I've been on since 9/11. And I had the undesirable task or opportunity to be one of the first groups of members to go to Ground Zero and to go by train, because airlines and aviation had not started up. No, I was not there for the rescue, would never suggest. But because the first responders were so committed, they were still engaged in the rescue, in the recovery of remains. And so you could be on the site and you could hear the whistle blowing, which meant that they found the remains of some fallen in the course of that disaster. We know that that disaster was a worldwide disaster because people from all around the world and all faiths lost their lives on that day. But we also know that a Republican president went to Ground Zero. This is not a characterization of whether you were for or against, but he made a certain comment that should prevail. After someone said they couldn't hear you, he said, "I hear you," and began to talk to them. But he, in the course of dealing with this, he made America know that we were not demonizing, we were not categorizing, we were not saying that one religion was the cause, or that we should demonize a religion, or demonize a people, or demonize a region. And so we have tried in Homeland Security, or there are members of us who continuously press the issue as we collectively work to fight terrorism. And there are challenges and agreements and disagreements in this room, and I hope you'll have a vigorous discussion. But we try to deal with the issue of countering violent extremism in a way that we respond to human beings. And we try to listen. And we try to get people to be comfortable, not to profile or to tell on their friends and neighbors, but to help us keep America secure. Or to help those who determine that they want to go to the fight from the United States, that there are other ways. And this is a nation that has wonderful values, but there are people who feel that they're left out, or they feel that their principles or their homeland is left out, or that they're put upon. And that's why I'm grateful for the wide diversity of those on this panel. It is clearly important to be able to say that the way that we should run this country is not through fear and intimidation and hate. We will never succeed if that is what is going to be our direction. And what is happening in the most recent time, things that I can say and some of those here cannot, is that we've empowered those who utilize hate speech. The Department of Homeland Security will define violence through hate speech. Hate speech is protected by the First Amendment, but not to the extent that it incites violence and death against other innocent individuals. The Sikh temple, the most recent, the two Indian engineers, where the perpetrator said, "I've got 2 Mideasterners," or the young man in Charleston, South Carolina, walked into a church of African Americans who were in prayer and killed 9 people. We must find a way to be as strong against hate speech, and it must be listened to by no matter what administration is in. Now, there are 2 things that we are fighting in Washington, those of us who disagree, and that is the misleading Muslim ban, absurd, does not provide, as far as any of us who are thinking are concerned, any enhanced security. It does not help. And a 16-year-old from Jordan who was going home to do what he needed to do, which is to extend his documents, whose documents were extended by the U.S. Embassy in Amman, and to come back and to be detained as a 16-year-old, not being allowed to speak to his family, and then being shipped from Houston to Chicago. To my office, got involved and said, enough is enough, because he was going to be there for a long period of time while paperwork was done and while various processes were done. But he had legal documents and he was detained. And this has happened to any number of travelers. The Muslim ban is one that does not work and I believe is not effective. Obviously, the Department of Homeland Security is on hold. Their job, of course, is to answer your questions and to be able to talk about what works. But I know from a policy perspective, the Muslim ban is more hurting than it is helpful. Number 2, the immigration order is also one that is very difficult to enforce. There's something called humanitarian parole. There's something where you are allowed to get your papers in order. And over the last couple of presidents, Republican and Democrat alike, you could engage with leadership and you could resolve whether this person would get their documentation or have a pause so that they could, in fact, be able to get status in some way, shape, form, and fashion. Mr. Escobar, who many of you may have heard that story, someone who was contributing, a paint manager of a store, citizen wife, citizen children, was doing what he was asked to do, which would be reporting, and he was picked up, handcuffed in front of his children, or his 2-year-old, and shipped to South Texas. We were engaged. We got a confirmation that he would not be deported, and some individual felt that he didn't want to be bothered anymore, and he deported him. catastrophic for that family. That ties into what we're trying to do in this nation, which is to make it safe. So I simply want to encourage this discussion. Hate speech is one that leads to attitudes that provoke others to violence. And your input and concern on how we best secure this nation and how we live amongst each other in the richness of our diversity with our many faiths is crucial. And we are listening to you, but we're also acting on our own conscience and our own understanding of the common humanity of all. I conclude by simply saying that there are many conflicted places around the world. Congress will be debating the question of the use of military force as relates to the Mideast and certainly Syria. We need to protect the Syrian people. We need also to hear from the American people, and we need also to have Congress to do its job as relates to any act of war. So I hope that this will be a vigorous discussion. I have certainly gone past the range of things that you will be discussing, but I know that the panelists will provide you with the stimulation that we will have solutions that I know that I will hear. And I want to thank the Jack Valenti School of Communications, and I also want to thank you, Yanni, for working with me in the past, Dr. Lonnie, and all of you for giving you this opportunity in this week to discuss peace, solutions, the respect, and the dignity of all humanity, no matter who they are and where they've come from. That should be our pathway in this nation. Thank you all very much.
Let's give one more round of applause for Congresswoman. Thank you. Thank you. All right, guys, before we get started with our panel, we are going to have a little activity, which you're going to use your fans. Did everyone get one? Hold it up. Prove it. All right, awesome. So, Carly and I over here, we're going to ask you a series of questions, and I believe that if you are answering in the yes, you're going to hold up the me to we side, and no, you're going to hold up the white side. So, everyone is going to be answering the question. So, if you're more leaning toward yes, me to we, let's see them. More leaning toward no, white side. Excellent. You are great. Okay, so I'll get started. Am I still using? Okay. Still going to use the microphone. Can everyone hear me okay? Nice. All right, first question. How many of you are college students, whether at U of H or elsewhere in Houston? Excellent, excellent.
Okay, next question. Do you feel as though you are an opinionated person? That may mean, you, everyone. It's like, yes, I am an opinionated person.
Okay, next question. How many, do you feel as though you have friends that have different beliefs than you? What about family? Family? Okay, pretty similar.
How many of you feel, do you feel like your job or classroom allows you to express your beliefs? Okay.
How many have ever felt scared or concerned? I keep saying how. Have you ever felt scared or concerned about something that you've read concerning news on immigration? So, yes, no. Have you ever felt that you couldn't ask questions without reservation, that you could be free to ask questions about the news that you did see? Interesting.
How many of you feel that the media has given you enough information on Muslim immigration? Okay? And how many of you feel that the media has given a slanted view of the Muslim immigration or of Muslim immigration? Okay.
Do you feel cautious when you see someone who looks differently or dresses differently than you?
How many of you feel concerned about terrorism here in the U.S. or elsewhere? And how many of you feel threatened by terrorism here in the U.S.? Okay.
Do you feel as though you know enough about countering violent extremism? Well, before we start our panel, I just wanted to give you a brief definition of what we have been learning what a violent extremist is. It's a person who advocates or is involved in furthering political or social objectives promoted by a foreign terrorist organization. And we've got an excellent panelist who are going to give us a lot of insight toward what we've been learning in our class. And I'm going to turn it over to Carly.
So this class, we have been working all semester to create this event, in creating this campaign to put on for you all. We hand-selected the panelists. We divided ourselves up with what our jobs are going to be. We disagreed on some of those things, but we came to a conclusion about what we wanted this campaign to be. And so it's a national competition. So there are other universities in all 50 states that are competing against us, and your interaction in this event is vital. It's key for us to be able to participate and be just even a contender in the competition. We titled our campaign Me to We, with the tagline being disagreement doesn't equal hate. So we're here to show that differing opinions does not have to result in violent extremes. We are moving from what I think, we're moving from me, to what we think, to the we. And we are here to prove that disagreement doesn't equal hate. Everyone put your hands together for Felicia.
Thank you, Carly and Haley. That was a good introduction. Wow, your paddles, they really told a lot. That's what a lot of the country is really feeling. So a lot of what our research has been doing is trying to figure out what these divided opinions are and ways to bring it together. So this Big Talk event was organized by us, a team of students from the Valenti School of Communication in coordination with this nationwide effort with DHS and many other government agencies to counter violent extremism. This forum addresses the divided opinions of Muslim immigrants by offering a safe and open environment for fact-based, data-driven discussions. The point is not to change your mind. This isn't political. This is not to change your mind at all. It's to give you a more educated view of the facts on what causes terrorism, who does it, and more importantly, who here in the community is working to fight it. We hope that by the end of this event, that you have learned something new, or at least observed another perspective that you hadn't before. We only ask that you be open and honest with yourself and ask questions. And let us know if something here was memorable to you. And you can do that as well with the hashtag MeToWeHTX. If you have a question, tweet at us, snap us, Instagram us, anything throughout the course of this event. And we'll try to get that question answered at the end of it with a student Q&A. We brought together 8 panelists who are all key stakeholders in countering violent extremism. Over here to the left is William Beltran. He's with the Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, assigned to the U.S. Border Patrol headquarters in Washington, D.C. Mr. Beltran is an operations officer with a focus on strategic planning and analysis efforts. We have Hesham El-Gamiyel. Mr. El-Gamiyel is a special agent who supervises a counterterrorism unit of the FBI's Houston Division. He was born and raised in Egypt and arrived in the U.S. when he was just a teen. The FBI is dedicated to countering violent extremism by working together with local communities to detect, deter, and disrupt threats to the homeland, as well as the U.S. interest abroad. We have here Mustafa Carroll. He is the executive director of CARE Texas, the Houston chapter, and it stands for the Council on American Islamic Relations. It's a nonprofit, grassroots civil rights and advocacy organization. Its mission is to enhance the understanding of Islam, encourage dialogue, protect civil liberties, empower American Muslims, and build coalitions that promote justice and mutual understanding. We have Imam Mubashir Ahmed. He was born in India and immigrated to the U.S. from Pakistan in 1969. He has devoted his life to convey the message of Islam and promote multicultural and interfaith understanding. He currently serves the Ahmadiyya Muslim community as its national spokesperson, a regional missionary, and is a member of the editorial board of the Muslim Sunrise magazine. He's also the author of Approaching the West, which was published in 2010. And then we have Dr. Leah Hellmuller. She is an assistant professor in journalism and mass communication here at the University of Houston. Some of you may have seen her around or have had a class or two with her. Her research has been recognized with top paper awards. There's a lot of them here, but I'm going to go through a couple. By the International Communication Division of the Association for Education in Journalism and Mass Communication, as well as by the Global Communication and Social Change Division of the International Communication Association. So prior to joining the academia, she worked as a journalist in Switzerland, South Africa, and the United States. We have Pastor Mike Acosta, and he has been the missions pastor for Grace Church for over a decade. His church has 9 international partners, and he has a personal relationship with the leaders in Haiti, Tanzania, Ghana, India, Russia, Mexico, Jordan, Iran, and Cambodia. He works with these leaders by helping facilitate leadership conferences, provide humanitarian aid, and equip indigenous leaders with resources for work in their country. And he also serves as the International Ministries Director for the Global Network for Christian Ministries. And over here on the end is Danny Hamracio. He's a 30-year veteran of television news industry. He spent 15 years as a reporter across Texas and spent another 15 years as a news manager. He helped start TV station in U.S. Virgin Islands. He was an overnight news manager of MSNBC during the 9/11 attacks and the beginning of the Afghanistan war. More importantly, most recently, Mr. Hamracio currently works at the assignment desk at KHOU in Houston, if you watch KHOU 11, where he helps direct the daily coverage of news stories. So first of all, let's give a round of applause for... Let's get straight to the questions. First and foremost, I want to ask, because this has a lot of people confused, especially with a lot of the paddles that we saw earlier today. But what is it exactly that causes terrorism? Or should I say, what drives a person to become a terrorist? And I'll start with you, Mr. Beltran.
Thank you. I just want to start off by saying it's a privilege to be here speaking in this auditorium with future leaders. You guys have all taken the first step in recognizing and acknowledging that there are issues and concerns here in the United States today. Terrorism is a multifaceted issue that addresses many factors of our daily lives. And unfortunately, there's been lots of situations, lots of incidences across the nation from east to west coast. And there are many factors or many stereotypes that address what causes someone to be a terrorist, or what is a terrorist, what is terrorism. There are many psychological, social, behavioral factors, but the one conclusion that we've come up with is there is no single profile for someone involved in terrorism. As we've seen, there's been numerous situations that involve several different nationalities, different efforts that were taken in causing terrorist acts. Yes, there were some behavioral issues. There was sometimes a sense of belonging. There were lone wolves out there. Sometimes there were terrorist cells that were organized. There were many ideological, political concerns. Sometimes there was a sense of revenge. Sometimes it was a sense of someone not belonging, someone not being able to assimilate to culture here in the United States that drew them to that radical extreme view. A lot of that's driven by propaganda. Social media has been huge in the U.S. today. It's readily accessible. It's available. Everyone has access to Facebook, Twitter, all these different sorts of social media tools. So a lot of these organizations have taken the opportunity to cash in on those types of resources. We consider that terrorism, recruiting for terrorism and violent extremism is a lot, can be related to the same type of recruiting that takes place for cartel members, same type of recruiting that we see along the lines of gangs here in the United States. We have individuals that come into this country to escape the issues, the gangs, the terrorism in their home countries. When they come to the U.S., some are unable to assimilate and are drawn towards the same issues that force them to leave. So, there are a lot of reasons for someone turning into terrorism, but the one thing to take away is there's no single profile that can describe what is a terrorist.
And first, if I would allow, if everybody, who can hear in the back? Would any of you mind moving forward a little bit closer to be able to hear?
They're having audio issues.
We'll take this time to do that before we get.
No, that's okay. If you want us to step down and off the stage, we can try and project.
This, I don't think this one works either. This one doesn't work either.
This one don't work either?
It's a pop.
It's getting these.
Is? Okay. Is it live stream getting this one? I'll try. I'm very quiet.
Okay, is everyone settled? It was going through live stream. Great. So we're going to finish the question with Mr. El Gamiel. And again, what drives a person to become a terrorist?
Once again, I want to reiterate what my colleague said, that there really isn't a single set of factors that we can identify that someone would subscribe to become a terrorist. If this is the case, our job would be a lot easier. The reality is the process of radicalization or someone to become a terrorist varies from one person to another. Person, depending on their socioeconomic status, their family background, their ideology, where they grew up, some of the circumstances that are put upon them based on their communities. It all varies. And you put two different individuals through the same exact circumstances, one of them may become radicalized and the other one is not. So the answer is not uniformed across the board, and that's why we deal with individual terrorists on an individual level. We don't look at a particular profile to try to identify someone. It just does not work and it does not exist.
Thank you so much. To our next question. Now, what is the biggest challenge when fighting terrorism, both like here in the U.S. and specifically in Houston? And I want to start again with you, Mr. El Gamiel.
The biggest challenge we have is we're dealing with an ideology right now. It's not necessarily a criminal act that has been committed and we're trying to retroactively find who did it and solve the crime. We're trying to identify an ideology, if somebody subscribes to, can lead them to commit an act of violence. And the challenge is trying to stop a crime before it's committed. We're trying to get ahead of the game because if it's too late, then someone's life is at risk. And that becomes very difficult. From an HVE or homegrown violent extremist, those are what we call lone wolves. Those are different than the typical terrorist organizations that we have seen in the past, where they operate in a group with a hierarchy and sometimes membership. With the HVEs, they're individuals, they're dispersed, they're not part of a network or a group. They're radicalized through the internet and social media. The fact that they're not operating within a group makes it extremely hard for us to detect them and disrupt their activity. Not to mention, in the past, what we had dealt with is a so-called terrorist or a member of a terrorist organization who wanted to commit an act of violence will have to have means and capabilities, and that typically means access to explosives or weapons. Now what we're seeing is someone who has access to a set of keys or a kitchen knife, and trying to identify that person before he or she commits an act becomes extremely difficult. So these are the set of challenges that we have now.
Great, thank you. Mr. Beltran, do you have anything to add?
Just to add on to that, one big challenge is that this issue is widespread. It's widespread in the United States, worldwide. So what we try to do is develop a strategy that addresses each of those levels. We try and come up with a national strategy to handle things at a strategic level, which is developing large-scale programs and networks and collaborative efforts with other agencies. What we do is we have a Southern Borders and Approaches campaign that assigns responsibility in different areas of the United States to cover not only the border, but we also cover the interior. We cover the waters, the air, and marine domains. So it's a very widespread issue. The second layer is going to be the operational layer, and that's where we have specialized joint task forces, joint terrorism task forces in different sectors across the nation, and that's to address all the needs that are taking place in all different areas and all different organizations that are operating across the United States. So we try and address it at multiple levels, and then on the tactical level, we try and address, we have stations all over the United States. We have airports, seaports. We try and address these issues not only when we come into contact with individuals, but we're making efforts to screen individuals before they get to the country, so to screen individuals and goods and merchandise before it gets to the United States and has a chance to cause harm. So we try and approach this issue, this widespread issue, on multiple levels and multiple layers at the strategic, operational, and tactical levels.
Thank you. I know that the challenges they just don't allow, like, just with the government. It's with community as well. Does anyone have anything to add to this challenge on countering? Okay, Mr. Carroll.
This issue of terrorism, number one, and I have to agree with him, there's no profile. And I'm sitting here with Department of Homeland Security and FBI, so I don't know what causes it. Because I don't want them to profile. No, I'm just kidding. But I do know what makes people mad. And I do know, as one of our pioneers in sociology, Bandura, said, that it's the social conditions that help to create that entity, that terrorist, or that act. And just, okay. You're getting things working, I'll wait. So while I can appreciate the fact that it is just listening to them is just overwhelming to prevent something from happening, that it shows you the amount of energy that it goes in to preventing one individual for committing a heinous act. It's just no way that you can figure it out. But I know what creates or helps to create the conditions that would make somebody mad enough to want to do it. And most people are just regular folks. If somebody does something to your family, if you are in a condition where somebody is killed, for example, or maimed or what have you, then those things can help the condition. One of the things I remember as a kid, that we got angry just watching how our parents and our grandparents got treated. And watching that made us angry, even though it didn't take us to the level of killing anybody. But we were right on the cusp, that if you watch your folks get misused and get mishandled or be treated badly, that helps to create it. Now, what can we do or what to stop that from happening? One of the things was that, people being integrated into society. There's a whole kaleidoscope of things that we can do to help that. But, I don't want to say that we don't know anything about it, because sometimes the terrorists will tell you why they do things. They'll tell you it's in response to something. They'll tell you it's your foreign policy. We may not like it, but a lot of times we hear this. It's in the media, it's everywhere, and they don't mind telling you that. Now, that's not to justify what they do either, because what they're doing is absolutely wrong. But we know what it takes to make people mad. We know how we are as human beings, and we know that if someone does something to us, how we would feel in those same conditions. And I'm saying that because we've had terrorists in this country as long as I can remember and before. We just haven't paid that as much attention to them as we are doing now. But we've had terrorists. We have them now. We have the Klan. We have the militia. We have the Aryan Nation. We have all these different groups, hate groups, who are actually doing things in this country. So hope that
It does.
hope
Thank
that
you.
makes some sense.
It does. So next, we have microphones. This is fantastic.
Uh-oh.
Good claps on that. So the next thing, there's so many misconceptions that are brought up. But in your area field, I want to know, what are the top misconceptions that you see in your area when it comes to Muslims, specifically in fighting terrorism? Because so many Americans, and you hear this over and over, they associate Islam with terrorism. And do they have a point? And I'll go ahead and start with, Imam Mubashir Ahmed. I'm sorry?
Is the microphone working?
Oh, you can use this one. This is fine.
It's very important to understand, as we have been already going through, what are the real causes of terrorism. To getting mad and being revengeful, of course, these are the basics. But then we see the steps that are taken, which is killing oneself. It's called suicidal missions. And it's rather beyond the imagination how this person is taking revenge and expressing his madness while he is killing himself or herself. So it has to be little beyond the common sense. Either the person has been completely gone crazy, or somebody has completely washed his mind and put something inside that even killing yourself is good if you kill more people. And what kind of people they are killing? Are they their personal enemies? Had they done anything to them personally? Not. Usually they go in a restaurant, in a bus, and they kill innocent people that had nothing to do person to person. So we have to understand in depth what is happening and why it's happening. From the Islamic perspective, there's a very famous saying of the Prophet that all action depends upon your intention. If intention is just to kill someone, then America is full of that kind of terrorism, because there are thousands of people are being killed every day, and for different reasons. They are not known as terrorists. But from Islamic perspective, when a person is given this thought that you will end up losing your life, but don't worry, this is a temporary life, you are going to enter the second life, which is forever, and you will be far better off in coming life. Now that is a perception which is basically a religious perception, a religious thought. And if that is not corrected, because it's completely misgiving, wrong to kill yourself in Islam, because suicide is something which is prohibited in Islam in any way. You look at that. But when a person goes and takes that action, we have to be very serious about that. And we have to know, so there are always someone behind the scene who is giving these thoughts to them, which is wrong, but they believe innocently that this is the right way, and then they're committed. Now, what are those thoughts? And I'm going to just go very briefly in some of the thoughts that are used is the wrong use of this word jihad. Jihad is, from their perspective, to go and kill others, and that's going to promote your own religiosity, which is completely counterproductive. From our perspective, and I belong to the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and we have been teaching to our own members, the members of Islam, that jihad is not to promote your religion by killing innocent people. The first jihad was allowed only in defense when other people were coming and attacking you and killing you and your household, destroying your property, only because you believed in the existence of God, one God. Permission was given. At the same time, it was elaborated, if that permission is not given, then the mosque, synagogues, churches, and all the temples where the name of God is being said will be destroyed. So in other words, jihad is not to kill a Jew or to a Christian or to someone else. Jihad is to protect what is known as the religious freedom by those who are attacking and killing those people. Now from this idea, the whole thing started converted, and these people are using this word in an absolutely wrong concept. And for 100 years, we are trying to remove that wrong conception of jihad that is being used to brainwash the youth of the Muslim community. This is just one side. But there are many other things that we can do to protect ourselves and to bring the right concept. Very briefly, if I'm allowed, I will give you only one example. We have heard about 9/11. 3,000 people were killed. They were all innocent in the sense that they were not engaged in any war against Muslims. And the killers who came in, we don't know their complete knowledge, but they were, it said, all belonged to Saudi Arabia, and they flew the aeroplanes into those. And there were many Muslims who were in those towers who got killed. 3,000 lives were taken. Now what to do? Just to keep on talking about Islam is bad, 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 or going to attack Afghanistan, or going to kill thousands of people in Iraq was the solution? Or the better solution now we are offering is, for last several years, to save lives. So we have a campaign that is Muslims for Life, and we collect blood and we donate blood on 9/11 and save 30,000 lives every year. 30,000 lives every year, year by year. So that's a positive way to let other people know that there are things that can be done better. The same people that you blame that they did this thing, they were completely brainwashed. They were not Muslim in the true sense of the word, and here it is that we can do better.
Thank you. And on the other side of this, on the government level, why do you believe so many Americans or people that you've worked with in the FBI or DHS, why do you believe so many Americans associate Islam with terrorism? On that, and Mr. El-Gamian.
Part of it, I have to say that, a lot of the misconception happens from the media, and the media definitely feeds on what the public wants to know and wants to hear. For instance, if you look at any average day in downtown Houston, Chicago, LA, New York, or any other metropolitan city, you'll find that a lot more people get killed from criminal acts than any terrorism acts probably on the planet for that day. But you don't get any mention of that, or you don't have, or you don't hear about it at all. For the victims of that crime, I don't think they really care that their loved ones being killed by a terrorist or a criminal. To them, it's the same thing. But if an act of terrorism takes place where, 1, 2, or 3 individuals, and not to belittle every life, if an act of terrorism happens, it will be on the news cycle day after day after day, and it will be associated with one particular religion most of the time, even before it's confirmed or the news gets released. From the FBI perspective, we're extremely careful about putting out statements regarding any terrorism incidents. Not until we fully investigate it, we find out the motives of the individual, and we find out what exactly happened. But before any of that happened, within the first 5 minutes, labels have already been put out on the news, and certain people have been labeled to be terrorists. I think that's probably the biggest misperception. But from within the government itself, I have to tell you that from, at least I can speak for the FBI, the misconception happens on both sides, where the FBI is accused a lot of not understanding the community. I have to say that that is a misconception, because since 9/11, most of FBI agents that are working in that field fully understand the Muslim community. They understand what the community is all about. They understand the mainstream from the radicals, the different sects of Islam, just because they've been practicing and they've been working in that field for so long, and they've been interacting with the community, most of the time in very positive ways. So people, that work this matter, they understand the people in the community. On the other hand, too, it's a lot of times people from the Muslim community, they don't understand what the authorities are doing. They don't understand the FBI. They don't understand the Homeland Security, how we operate, and that can cause some friction that alienates both sides from talking to one another.
Great, and you brought up some great points, and we're going to get to the media side of that in a little bit. But Mr. Carroll, did you have anything to add on the community side?
Yeah, I do. This is not just an issue of, just pure sociology where people just don't know any better. There's a concerted effort of groups, of 33 inner core groups and 41 outer core groups, who actually work to promote propaganda and misinformation about Muslims to the tune of over $200 million from 2008 to 2013. And those folks go around speaking, putting out movies, putting out propaganda, cherry-picking the Quran, taking pieces out of it, telling people that the Muslims are here to kill you, that we are a fifth column in the United States, that we're trying to bring Sharia law and subvert the Constitution, and this type of thing. So it's not an incident. It's not just that there's a bunch of people that don't know no better, and they're spreading this to the masses of folks. The likelihood that you know Muslims, because it's a religious minority, is low. So when you have people spreading propaganda, and I used to wonder about black folks like this. This is what happened when I was a kid. Except we didn't have the technology we have now. Now anybody with a computer or an iPod or a telephone can start their own thing, and they can keep spreading this propaganda across the country. And this is what's happening with us now. Now this propaganda has found its way into some of our media outlets, even the language. I never heard of the word jihadi. I didn't know anything about political Islam. Islam is everything. It's not just a political side in this. It's everything. So how you do your politics, how you treat your parents, how you spend your money, etc. So a lot of this propaganda and the words that they use, jihadi, I've never heard of that. Most of us knew jihad was a battle of self first, and ultimately if somebody attacks you, the only time that you can fight somebody is when they attack you. But this propaganda has been the biggest challenge we have. So they even have one, I didn't even know what it meant, taqiyya. Taqiyya says that Muslims are permitted to lie to non-Muslims. So what that does is they tell people, well, don't talk to them because they're going to lie to you just because. All right, so now if you go back and look at the history of this country and look at what happened to Jews, not even 100 years ago, that same type of propaganda they were putting out on Jews, that they'll lie, that they steal, that they're out to kill you, that they're going to bring a halacha law at the time and take over. Even with Catholics, when Kennedy ran for president, this was a big issue, that they're afraid the Pope's going to take over the United States. So it's not just that people don't know, it's that people are being misinformed. And now we have people in high levels, I won't say who they are, but we have people at high levels of government making the same type of ignorant statements. And those statements are hurtful, and those are the things that we are challenged to deal with.
Thank you. And so now we're talking a lot about the propaganda and the media. I'm going to go ahead and turn this question to our media representatives here. We had a student ask this actually right before this forum started, and said, we have recently seen Islamic extremists that were associated with many terrorist attacks on innocent people. We haven't seen, why haven't we seen similar extremists from other religions do that? But this is the part of the question that I want to direct toward the media, is like, why are these cases, or are these other cases not happening, or is the media just not reporting them? And so I'll give to Mr. Hermosillo.
I'll try to use my TV voice here. What's interesting is, let's just take, for instance, the name of this panel. We're talking about extremism, correct? But yet most of the discussion has focused on Islamic extremism. Nobody other than Representative Jackson Lee has mentioned anything about domestic terrorism. And whether you're talking about Dylan Roof, whether you're talking about the Colorado shootings, I think you did mention, though, about knife attacks here and there. When these do happen, for some reason, the conversation doesn't turn to terrorism. It's always either turned into a race issue, or it's turned into a gun control issue, which is kind of interesting. And I don't know if our law enforcement friends can enlighten us on that, but that just seems to be more along the line here. So it does get reported, but for some reason, it does get twisted. Now, one of the things that I did want to address, which you mentioned earlier, was about the media and painting things as far as terrorism and so forth. It is true. I can't speak for every media outlet out there, but I can tell you that every reputable outlet does restrain itself. We try to wait for the facts to filter in. You may be hearing that, let's say if there's an attack in France, that French authorities are saying they believe it may be a cell connected to this, that, and the other. And believe it or not, folks, we as journalists have to police ourselves, because we just can't go out and say this without the possibility of leaving ourselves open to legal repercussions. So we are constantly having to fact check, not just verify, as you see, which is a trend lately, but we do have to, if I see one TV station saying so-and-so was convicted of this, I have to go out myself and find out, did that actually occur? But what I will grant you along that line is, A, there's a lot of media that is no longer what I would call reputable, in the sense that it could be anybody. It could be Breitbart. It can be social media. And those branches of the media are quick to judge, quick to label. And the wildfire starts. And once somebody starts saying this, and then there does seem to be a bit of truth to it, then yes, reputable media does have to go and verify if that happened. But as far as why non-Islamic extremism isn't reported on, it is, but like I said, my gut feel is that it just tends to be painted with a different brush. I don't know why. I think that's kind of an interesting fact.
Dr. Hellmuller, would you like to also comment on this?
Yes. And I think we discussed this a lot in my global journalism class. So why is it that Islam is so often reported in the frame of terrorism? And I just wanted to kind of, build on that. I think it has a lot to do with news values and journalistic values, right? So extremism is something that's extraordinary. So journalists actually pay attention to that maybe more than we hold a Muslim event here on campus. So it has global reach. And I think that's one of, the strong thing that we have to look at. How do we select stories and be cautious about that as journalists as well. And then I wanted to also say something about, the way that stereotypes maybe also develop, and that has a lot to do with that too, that we kind of reinforce stereotypes sometimes in the way we select stories. So that with the rise of ISIS and Boko Haram, in Nigeria and ISIS in the Middle East, we have those terrorist threat developing, and so we pay attention to it, right? Because we've been attacked before. And so we see a lot of those frames, right, related to Islam and terrorism. And so the more we learn about those two things occurring together, the more we build those links in our brains as well. And so we kind of relate them to each other. So what may happen is that whenever we hear or see some attacks or terrorism, we automatically going to think about extremists, Islamic extremists. So just think about what happened in Egypt. We had 2 attacks. ISIS claimed responsibility on the weekend, and it was labeled a terrorism attack right away, right? And so I think we have to be aware of those dynamics that are going on in the media industry, and also be aware that this does not include the Muslim community. So also go out to the Muslim community and get those voices into those stories. So basically be more diverse.
And it's a great point. It doesn't include the Muslim community as a whole. And Imam Ahmed?
Just one point about media, because there are misconceptions also. But most people feel that there has to be some kind of sensationalism to sell their news. So they give a projection to anything that happens. Let me give you an example in the history here. You know, one person from UK wrote a third-class novel known as Stanic Verses. And Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran put $1 million on his head. Boom, it was the news of the world. Every media covered that, every place. But soon after that declaration, there were more than 25 Muslim leaders and scholars, Islamic scholars, who made it very clear in a very meeting that this putting kind of death penalty to a novelist who might have read something, might have said something very offensive, is wrong. Not a single newspaper, not a single television covered that news over there. So sometimes it happens, and that could be misperception on our part, but if there's no sensationalism, then the news is not projected the way it's being projected.
Thank you. And Mr. Carroll, you had a few words?
Yeah, I'd just like to say one thing. I think the media has a job to do, and I have found Houston media to be fairly, to be fair. I mean, they get point, counterpoint, and they try to get your side. They want to hear the whole thing. Here's the problem. The majority of folks, the majority of people get this information about Islamic quote-unquote terrorism. We had 372 mass murders in 2015. 2 of those were from Muslims, one in San Bernardino, one in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And those two terrorist mass murders got more credit than those 300 and some odd things. There have been more people killed in 2012 by white supremacists, over 200, than all of post 9/11 by any Muslims. Muslims have committed maybe 50 murders in terms of just random murders. There's been over 300,000 of those in the last 17 years, averaging something like 10,000 a year. But we get depressed. Now, part of the reason that we get it is because ISIS identifies itself as an Islamic organization. What happens here is it feeds the prejudices that people have here in this country, and those people who actually spread this propaganda love to hear that. So what do? When I go out to speak somewhere and I say, no, Islam doesn't say this, it doesn't say that, you shouldn't be killing people, etc., they tell me I'm giving them a watered-down version that the real Muslims is ISIS. Now, if you're saying that the real Muslims are ISIS, then what you're actually doing is elevating them to a level they don't deserve. So that's like saying the Klan is the real Christians. If you say the Klan is the real Christians, then what about the rest of y'all? That means that the Klan is the real leaders. And that's what's going on now. And they like to do this stuff And then when you try to combat it by saying something, you can't even convince most of these people. Now, what I think the media could do in terms of that is stop using them terms. Just call them a terrorist. These people are not Islamic terrorists. They're just terrorists. Now, I don't say they're not Muslims, because it's not up to me to tell you who is a Muslim and who isn't. But that word itself is charged. Jihadi is charged. Political Islam is charged. Those words have meaning. When you say them, they actually make people want to watch your show. All right, you say a Muslim did it, everybody jumps up. We got people who are mentally ill in Islam. We got those people, they go out and do crazy stuff, like this guy in Orlando. Automatically, people say, see, they're having Islamic terrorism here. We can't have crazy people. Everybody else can have crazy people. All right? Some white guy goes and blows up a Planned Parenthood clinic. He's not a terrorist. He's just off a little bit. He's crazy. We got crazy folks. We got people who are mentally ill. We got people who we have domestic violence, like everybody else. And that's the problem, is that we pick and choose which one of these groups we're going to promote. We haven't done half of this stuff, not in America at least.
And I'll go with you in just a second, but you did mention a lot with the Christian side of things too. And I do want to get to Pastor Acosta here, who's been patiently waiting. But and one of the things, the questions that we have here is anything being done in the Christian community to stop terrorism? Do you speak out against it, or if so, why isn't it being heard by everybody?
Well, I think within the Christian community, there's a concern about speaking really out against anything, because it's very quickly to be painted as an extremist. It seems like Westboro Baptist Church has gotten more coverage than the thousands and tens of thousands of incredible churches around our country. And I can't say that I'm always proud of them. In fact, I'm never proud of them. But I will tell you, within the Christian community, there is fear, there is uncertainty, and there is doubt. There is fear that as you looked at what happened in Egypt, that there was targeting. There was targeting specifically at Christians. They were targeted by people who wrapped themselves in the flag of Islam. So when someone wraps themselves with an ideology, whether it's a perverse understanding or a perverse literation of that particular ideology, and you target another group, news travels fast, especially in our day and age today. And it is social media, and it is sites like LiveLeak, or you see video evidence of something, and the news reports come out that this was in a Christian church on Palm Sunday, a religious day, and a bomb was placed directly under the seat of parishioners who simply came to celebrate their faith. And the terrorist in this particular situation, we believe, and as many other situations that involve car keys or flying planes into building, it may be because people have wrapped themselves in the flag of Islam. So in the Christian community, there's a perception that absolutely exists. Fear of being targeted. You know, this is a forum actually that's not about Islam as a religion. My understanding is this is a forum and a panel about Islamic immigration. So to me, the question is, if there's a people group that feels fear because they've been targeted by a group of people who cloak themselves in the ideology of a certain belief system, and then you're allowing them to come into your country, well, how can you tell me which ones have a perverted view and which ones do not have a perverted view? That's a big question within the Christian community. Who is the real Muslim? Are you going to ask them? Are you going to go in deep into their belief system? How are you going to filter that? Then there's uncertainty. It begins with fear, and that migrates its way over to uncertainty. Uncertainty about religious protections, uncertainty that our government has the bandwidth or the manpower or the resources to be able to do the proactive investigating and filter and do extreme vetting or not vetting at all. Is there a balance in there? I think there's uncertainty about the protections that are coming from our government from people who wrap themselves in an ideology that drove some folks to fly planes into buildings. And then finally, there is doubt. There is doubt that there are those types of protections. There's doubt that what we see portrayed, whether it's the current president or the past president, that there's really any power to stop someone who's been radicalized from coming into the country, or to have someone who's already in the country prevent them from becoming radicalized. Because you don't necessarily have to get on a plane and fly somewhere else to be radicalized. You can be radicalized on the internet. You can be radicalized, anywhere at any time. So from an immigration perspective, I think there is fear on behalf of the Christian community, uncertainty on behalf of the Christian community, and doubt on behalf of the Christian community. So how do we combat it? I think it begins with understanding, and I think it begins with, the commandments of Christ. When he was asked, what is the greatest commandment? What should people who follow you do? And he said, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, and all of your strength. And then the second part that so often gets overlooked, love your neighbor as yourself. And if I love my neighbor as myself, my neighbor may look like me, my neighbor may not look like me. My neighbor may agree with me, my neighbor may disagree with me. But I am to love that person as myself. Some of the kindest, most generous people as I travel the world that I've ever met are Muslim. So I am to love my neighbor as myself. But I think the fear of being targeted, the uncertainty that there's anything we can do about it, and the doubt that exists within the Christian community creates an environment that Christians feel threatened, and they're very concerned about what our government can possibly do to protect their safety.
And does anyone have anything to add with that?
I think this was an excellent point about fear and doubt. And fear and doubt are the most successful recruitment tool for groups like ISIS. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. If you think about some of the attacks that they commit or inspire when someone goes on a rampage to stab a couple people with a knife, once again, if you put it in the broader perspective, 2 individuals stabbed is not, on an average day, is not going to get the media cycle, the news cycle. But if it happened to be inspired by ISIL, it's going to be on breaking news hour after hour after hour, and that causes that fear, which then isolates a portion of the community. In this particular situation, the Muslim community becomes isolated, becomes not integrated the way it should be. And before you know it, they're looking at an alternative, someone that, or some agent or organization or entity that can help them in this isolation or help them stand up to the entity that's isolating them. Then ISIS becomes the saving tool for them. So it drives more and more recruits into the arms of ISIS. So it's not the attacks that are being inspired by groups like that. It's not necessarily to cause them mass casualty. They just want to get that fear instilled in the community, and we cannot allow them to do that. That's part of going back into the counter radicalization effort, the counter violent extremist, is that counter message and the counter narrative that needs to go out there.
That actually brings us to this next part, because Pastor Acosta, you did say this is a lot about Muslim immigration as well. So let's go ahead and get to that question. We received a lot of questions from students as well, especially when we decided to put on this forum. And one of the ones that stood out was, do you not believe in protecting our country from Muslim extremists? Whenever they even thought of the idea of putting out something like countering extremism as a panel. So in that, should we fear Muslims or Muslim immigration? But to the second part of that, with this travel ban in the Middle East and its relation to countering extremism, is it effective? And I'm actually going to start with someone in the Muslim community. We'll start with Mr. Carroll.
Well, first of all, the way that you counter fear is you get to know people. One of the things that we do on a regular basis, and I think Imam Mubashir does it well also, is that we try to get out and know our neighbors, know people in different faiths. I was studying to be a pastor before I became a Muslim. I was 19 years old. All right. And I understand the fear that you're talking about, because we had the same kind of fear when our churches were being burned and blown up and when our people were being lynched as Christians. So I do understand that. And I'm not trying to go tit for tat, but I just want you to know I understand what you mean by it, and I can understand the fear. But I want us to get off, just for a minute, off of this religious wild goose chase, because the reason that these people are doing what they do ISIL or whatever you want to call them, is for resources. They're not doing it because they're religious people. They're not trying to spread religion. They're cloaking themselves in religion, wrapping themselves in religion, as you said, to achieve a political aim. So that's something we need to know. Those people that's doing that are not 1.7 billion people in the world. They're not the American Muslim community. The American Muslim community is one of the most productive communities in this country. If you send them all back, the country is going to have problems. 20% or so are medical doctors, 30% engineers, over 60% are formally educated, and most are paying more taxes and doing more good than what we know about. The ban does not do anything but create other problems. You're keeping, and it's a Muslim ban. Let's just call it what it is. It's not a country ban. It was a Muslim ban. Our president said that was what he was going to do, and he's doing it. So it is a Muslim ban, but it is not helping our situation at all. It's creating more fear, more apprehension. Look, we just went over and bombed Syria, and then shortly before that, we didn't even allow this. We were putting an indefinite ban on Syrians. Now, these are people running from absolute terror and absolute death, and we put a ban on them, but then we're going to go and give them more of the same stuff that they've been getting with barrel bombs and everything else. So the ban is not helping. The ban is further stigmatizing the Muslim community. It makes us all look like we're all ready to blow stuff up, and that's just not true.
Okay, and Imam Ahmad.
We just heard that there are more than 1 billion Muslims in the world. Every sixth human being on the earth is a Muslim. You pick and choose 5 or 6 countries out of 56 countries, as if those are the only countries from where the terrorists coming out, and the rest are completely innocent. This kind of misperception, and then using the word Islamic terrorism. If you're using Islamic terrorism, then Islam is all over the world. Then prohibit everyone who's coming from any part of the world because Muslims live there. Now, we are amazed while our leaders, political leaders, use this term Islamic terrorism again and again and again, and then they believe, and then they say, oh, this is okay. When you're using the word Islamic terrorism, then you're blaming all those who belong to Islam. Let me give you another example that will make it a little bit easier for us to understand why this term is wrong. We all know the history. We all know Hitler, who hated Jews, not only for political reason or economical reason. He got them killed in the most worst form of a way, calling them Christ killers. And he himself was a staunch Christian who killed millions of Jews. And everyone who we call them Nazis were Christians. Suppose if you start saying that whole thing were Christian terrorism or Christian this and that, how would the rest of the Christians will feel? It was the Christians who rose up against Hitler. It was the Christians who got him killed and finished his party. But in history and otherwise, we call it Nazi party. So, whoever is doing a wrong thing in Islam and Muslim countries, we should give them the specific recognition name instead of just blaming the whole religion of Islam and calling it Islamic terrorism. So that is one of the reasons why we are having trouble by seeing who are being sent in, are coming in as refugees. We are blocking them when they can't come in. As far as the terrorists concerned, we have heard earlier that there's no religious group who doesn't have terrorists among themselves. There are people who are killed in India. They are Hindus, and Hindus are killing Hindus. For example, one of the prime ministers was blown up by a Hindu lady by blowing herself out. Wasn't it an act of terror? Now, are we going to call it Hindu terrorism and say, okay, we are not going to allow Hindus to come to our country? Because there are suicidal killers in Hindus also. It's just one example. So therefore, we have to be careful by using these words, and we have to be careful being afraid of everyone. Of course, we have to get it better to know the individuals who are coming in, what is their background, things like that, whether they're Muslim, Christian, Hindu, Sikh, doesn't make any difference. You go and do your job first class, and then stop them coming in if you believe that this person is not right to come to our country.
Okay, Pastor Acosta, you had a...
Yeah, just I appreciate what we've heard so far. It's one thing I'd like to hear from our friends in the government, the FBI and Department of Homeland Security, concerning the Muslim ban, the travel ban, whatever you want to call it. There are those who would prefer one term over the other, and it's sometimes almost presented as though at random we just pulled countries out of a hat. There's no intelligence work that went in. There's no assessment of threat level. There's nothing that we just randomly said, hey, you know what, we're going to persecute a people group, so let's just start here, and let's do that. And I would be very interested to know from the government perspective if that's the case, if it is indeed the case where we decided we're going to persecute Muslims, and so we're going to start with these countries, and let's go ahead and impose a travel ban on them, and there's no supporting intelligence information whatsoever concerning this. And the other aspect of this is, within Islam, it's my understanding that the term jihad actually means the struggle. It's not war, it's the struggle. And I'm not sure, if it's the chicken or the egg. If the struggle, or the struggle of life, the struggle of persecution, comes before ideology, or if ideology comes before the struggle. Is it your socioeconomic circumstance? Is it is it the persecution of your people group? Is it what's happened to your family that drives you to horrible acts of terrorism? Or is it an ideology difference that is maybe a perverted view of what the religion actually means, but it's your ideology? And so from that standpoint of ideology, you're driven to commit terrible acts. And so I'd be really interested to know if this is kind of at random, the travel ban, or if there was intelligence maybe that went into that, if you guys could speak to that.
Mr. Beltran, would you like?
So I joined you guys here today from Washington, D.C., the land of politics, and I knew this question was going to come up. I knew I was going to be in the hot seat for an immigration question or the travel ban, Muslim ban. And based on the pending litigation, there's limited information we can discuss about it. But what I can tell you is it has brought a lot of argument. There's been a lot of animosity, a lot of misconceptions, a lot of unknown information about why this came into effect. And as a law enforcement officer, we don't get to choose which laws and which policies that we abide by that govern the United States. Our job is to secure the borders, secure this nation. We are governed by the laws and policies and the Constitution and certain rights, freedoms, and liberties that we all have to be governed by. So this particular travel ban, no, I can't really discuss in full detail how it came about, but as common practice in the government, we rely heavily on intelligence-based, risk-based, threat-based approaches. So we work very diligently in collecting intelligence, which relates back to some of those joint task forces, some of those which we do team up with multiple agencies across the nation to gather the best information we can to make decisions, to assist in decision-making, and to assist with actual information to make decisions and take action. So as far as the travel ban goes, sorry, I can't give you more than that based on pending litigation, but obviously it has been a hot-button topic here across the nation, and it has not been followed through on based on that current litigation. So it'll be interesting to see what what comes of it and what happens, but as sworn law enforcement officers, we have to carry out and follow through with the policies that are set forth. No matter what administration and what laws are set forth, we have to follow through. That was the oath we swore to take.
And this will be the only time that the FBI will have to defer to DHS, so.
And you're right about that. The travel ban is more on a political issue. So we can't change that it's above our heads. It's above our pay grade, as we say. But we can change how we react to it. And that gets us to the final part here. Before we take it to you for the student question and answer, just want to ask finally, what in your opinion can we do to be more informed? Because there's a lot of fake news, misinformation going around. We've already talked a lot about that, and about having to find the more find the credible news sources, and also in trying to learn more and educate yourselves to be better at understanding things that you may not understand before. And so what can a college student do here at the University of Houston to stop these terrorist ideals from spreading, and what can they do to be more informed themselves? Anyone just want to? Sure.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good question, because when I look at surveys and in how people have fears of, extremist Islamist, I see that, there are actually lower fears among younger generations. So I think that there is hope in kind of, preventing younger generations to be so extremely stereotyped about Islamic extremists. In my classes, usually I start with the question, like, what's the percentage of the US population? Like, what's the percentage of the Muslim community in the US? And I usually get responses like 30 or 50%. So we clearly see that there's somehow this overrepresentation of the Muslim community, together with that sense of terrorism, has created this overrepresentation in our heads in a way, right? So there are about 1% Muslims in the United States. So I think that's a good point to start is with some fact-based information in the classroom, definitely. So whenever you take interculture or global or whatever, those type of classes, I think they can really help in shaping, your fact-based knowledge on the Islamic community. Then also, I work a lot with, stereotype testing, so that students can actually test their implicit attitudes. So I'm not just working with explicit, so what we are conscious about, but also what kind of drives our nonverbal behavior, right? Our nonverbal reactions, maybe when we see Muslims on the streets, and students are usually very surprised in how negative their implicit attitudes are toward, certain religions that they don't know much about. And usually what we see in research is also that's because they don't have the personal interaction, as we've already heard. So most of those students get their information about what a Muslim is from the media. So again, bringing us back to mediated communication. But definitely I think students can do a lot. They can engage in those classroom discussion. I think those are very important, and maybe also, cross those borders of fears and interact with people from other religion.
Yes.
Actually, I have one more question. We're starting to get student questions in here, so I'm going to go ahead and this relates heavily to what we're just talking about. So, Mr. Amacio, I'm going to go ahead and start with you on this question. But it's here from the audience as more Muslims are being targeted by ISIS than Christians. And why is it that ISIS attacks on Muslims are not given the same media coverage? And also lastly, so what would it take for Christians or everyday Americans to change their minds about Islam? So it's a two-parter. We're going to start with the first part.
Okay, so I want to go back to some of the points that we had earlier about extremism or terrorism. It's not about the body count. It's about instilling fear. And part of that fear is also reinforcing stereotypes. So for instance, if there is an attack in a mall with a knife and 2 people are killed, it's reinforcing the stereotype in the public's mind of Islamic extremism, and but also that's in the American public's eye. And then when we react, when the American public reacts to it, then the ISIS and so forth say, you see, I told you so. So everybody is using this to reinforce these stereotypes, and that plays exactly to what they want to do. So, and the same thing you're talking about with the why aren't we hearing more about the attacks on others, Muslims? Largely because the majority of our audience isn't Muslim, and so therefore it gets play, but it doesn't catch. Now, what I wanted to backtrack to is kind of to the other question, and I think it's going to lead into what you're talking about. We do try, as the media, to give the positive view. I can tell you that there's been situations, say, for instance, after some stories concerning Syrian refugees, when we started getting them in there, we tried reaching out to Syrian organizations so that we could profile some of these families that are coming here. But we had a hard time finding anybody because of the fear. And rightfully so, because it's happened in Dallas and other places. A family gets profiled, and next thing you know, that family gets targeted. So it's tough along that line. And you mentioned earlier about after 9/11, I believe it was, when there was all the religious leaders who came out and said, this isn't us, and it didn't get much coverage. We've had that here before also, where there's been an attack on synagogues and on mosques and so forth. But what you have is 20 leaders up there talking, and yes, it gets coverage, but you're not going to hear from all 20. So I guess my point that I'm going to leave you with, and this is going to kind of go to the audience here too, because I saw you guys hold up your paddle saying the media doesn't do a good job of talking about immigration. You need to have an organized PR campaign, essentially is what it is. You have to raise the awareness not only within your community, but use that to reach the rest of the community. Similar to Black Lives Matter. It got to the point that you just kept putting it in the public's face that the public had to take attention of it. Whether you liked it or you were against it or whatever, it doesn't matter. People were discussing it. And you need to do that as well. And I'll wrap it up with this. Keep in mind that you are the media. You guys right now that have that phone in your hand, either you're looking at something or you're videotaping us right now, you have the power to go around the media, and you can do viral videos on your own. And my last thing is going to be, as we take questions, feel free to toss me ideas on what you think the media should be doing better.
May I add one very briefly? The thing is, we're talking about terrorism, and here we are confessing that we are afraid. We're living in fear. In other words, the terrorists are successful in whatever their objective is. Terrorism means to instill terror in your hearts. And if we behave as if we are afraid and we are very much looking here and there for every terrorist suspicion, this is giving them a victory. So my request would be to all of us, including media, that we should be courageous enough to recognize that somebody did something wrong, but we are not afraid of you. We can correct it, and we're going to correct you, and we're going to do something which is positive. So therefore, this attitude of being afraid is actually helping them, and they keep on moving on and do worse and worse things because they believe they are the winners as far as terrorism is concerned.
Perfect. And for the second part of that question, regarding Christianity, it's like, what would help ease the feelings of Christians about being targeted?
Well, I think what would ease the fear of Christians about being targeted, early on, there was whether it was coverage by the media, whether it was whatever it was. There wasn't, when ISIS came to be, when they came to the forefront, when they began taking territory, there wasn't a strong repudiation of their tactics or what they were doing from the Muslim community. Maybe there was, but it wasn't covered initially. So what the terrorists have successfully done in cloaking themselves in Islam is not only spreading fear, but attaching an identity to Islam. So I think understanding, looking to truly understand the precepts that Islam is founded upon, I would agree with our friends that are up here on the panel. Get to know a Muslim. Absolutely. Get to know them. Take a look at their life. And I think work to your very best to live according to what your belief system calls for, what the Bible calls for. Truly, I go back to that same scripture, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, and all of your strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself. You don't give power to fear. You simply live live a life of love, live a life of peace and of patience, of kindness, and then you place your faith and your trust in faith.
Thank you so much. Did you want to send it out to student Q&A more, or would you like to go ahead and? But hold on. Did anyone else have anything else to add before we? Just real quickly.
One thing, and it'll be quick. I hate to do this. We have been denouncing terrorism as loud as we can since 9/11. For 17 years, every time something looks like it's going to blow up, we get on television or we're on radio. And we can't, and I'm one of those persons don't think that we should have to say anything. I shouldn't be compelled to say it. I may feel an obligation to say I'm against it, but I don't feel like I need to come out here and say it any more than anybody else in this room denounces the bad deeds of people in their group. I don't remember a whole bunch of people denouncing the Klan. I didn't hear that happen when I was a kid. I don't hear people doing it now. If somebody, like the guy that blew up the place or killed those people in Colorado, I didn't hear a whole lot of people feeling compelled to come out and say he's not with us or what have you. I mean, the majority of Muslims are not doing these things. Why are we compelled to come out here and make statements about it as if we are engaged in the behavior? So I just wanted to say that. I know we'll probably have a lot of discussion afterwards.
Thank you. Oh, sure.
Because I'm going to go back at you guys now. If you do something and you get organized, please, please, please show up. Within the recent past, I'll tell you, last week, there was a protest, I think down at the Mickey Leland building, and then another one in the Galleria regarding the chemical bombings in Syria. We sent our helicopters. 4 people showed up at the first one, maybe 10 at the second one, and I think half of them were media. There was another event on campus here, I think it was Hug a Muslim. Great idea. I think I saw one person show up for that. So please, great ideas, but follow through with them.
I would have came.
Okay. All right. Everyone, please give a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much for being here today. An very engaging conversation.
Awesome. So several of you have tweeted in questions, and we have who they are. So we have the names. We have swag for you and a Starbucks gift card. And we want to be sure that you know we have a photo booth in the back for you to take pictures. Please, you can use our hashtag, you can tweet it, you can Instagram, you can Snapchat, we have our filter. There's a lot of ways for you to engage with us. The most important thing for us, again, with the competition, is that you participate in the post-event survey. We've gone a little long tonight, so we don't want to keep you over time. We do have a physical survey. You can fill it out. It's the same length as the pre one. It's not any different. And it's a way for us to measure our thoughts and our perceptions and what we learned tonight. So if you do that, it would help us with the competition. If you don't have time to stay, we can email it to you the same way that it was emailed before. If you can't stay and we didn't email you before, talk to us, we can make it happen. So I'm going to pass it off so that we can say the winners' names.
Oh, no.
we're doing raffle. We don't have names. Just kidding. I have names. No, we already do have names. That's what I said. You have to be present to win. Oh man, Thomas. Dunmar. No? Okay. Next. Can I have a drum roll? We all really quiet. And I need y'all to be excited about this because there's Starbucks in here. Zach Salermo. Listen, you people keep leaving.
Oh, wow.
Seriously, y'all's penmanship.
Oh,
Sandra Cortez? Cortez, we have someone. Okay. Nice. Also, if you have a question, you can lift your paddle in the air and we'll pass this to you as we're passing out gifts as well. So if you have we have a question right here in the front. Would you please state your name first?
I'm Medhat Nahas. I'm an assistant professor at the College of Technology. My question is how the university would incorporate something like that. I myself thought one time we can develop a course just to know one another. I'm a Muslim. I have a lot of friends. I lived in different countries like Italy, Egypt, Germany. And I would say like knowing one another is actually the tool or the vehicle to produce that. So the equation of how to treat that terrorism is mainly the education. And in our panel, by the way, we forgot that element in this equation of how to treat the terrorism.
I think that's a very good point, and I remember when I was in undergrad in California, I took a class in the culture community. We had a strange project, and what we meant was we had to pick someone from another religion and work with that person the whole semester and talk about stereotypes, right? We actually have to ask the person, what stereotypes do you have about my religion? And it's kind of, in a playful way, learn about maybe stereotypes and things that you think are true about that religion, but then with the interaction, actually, you get more aware and also more mindful about how it influences your behavior in the community and on campus and later on the job, of course. So I think education is crucial for decreasing fear and stereotypes and learning about others. Very good point. I think every undergrad student should take a class in the culture communication, but that's my own bias because I'm teaching those classes. But I think it's very helpful also for journalists to become more integrated and to actually not be afraid to maybe go out to other, communities you've never been before and seek out those sources. Because I know from my experience that journalism students usually just want to interview their other classmates or people on campus, but going out of campus and
I'm about to use
kinda,
it.
get more comfortable in doing that.
Okay.
It definitely help later on, of course, when they work with the professionals or wherever they work. Especially in Houston, because we are such an international city. So I think this is actually one of the best places, to educate on the stereotypes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Hellmuller. Okay, Daniel McDonald. You in the house, we have some swag for you. Anybody else have a question? Right here, in the front.
Oh, thanks. No, that's fine. Hello. My question, I'm Ian Shoddy. I'm a communication student. Thank you all for coming. This has been very informative, and I'm sure everybody appreciates it. My question is for Imam Mubashir Ahmad, but I'll also open it up for everybody. You spoke toward fatwas, Salman Rushdie, and the satanic verses earlier, and how the media really didn't hit on the retraction of the satanic verses. When we look at Charlie Hebdo in France, the shooting, we look at Stephen Crowder drawing the Prophet Muhammad. We also look at others who go so far as to insult him. Why do we see in Islam such a streak of violence when it comes to the Prophet Muhammad, his depictions, and speaking of him? Thank you.
With all due respect, if we can keep this answer as quick and as easy as possible. Thank you.
Yeah, they gave me only a few seconds to respond, so the thing is, there are, as I gave you the example of Hitler, it was not only one person, two person, three persons. The whole German nation was against a particular group, and they were killing them in the worst form ever imaginable. So same thing is true with some Muslim groups. They kind of put those kind of ideas in those people here and there, wherever they are, and they commit those crimes which we believe are against Islam, and they are criminals. And that's the way it is.
All right, thank you. We have one more question, I believe.
Haley, second. Who lifted their hand for a question? Oh, you have a question. Sorry. I thought you wanted to do something else.
Thank you. My question is to Mr. Carroll and Mr. Ahmed. You talked about brainwashing and true meaning of jihad and true Muslim and cherry picking from the religious text. There's always context, obviously, regional context and cultural context. But how can you come on the same page? Even all the religious scholars, they don't agree with each other, right? And I don't think any religion is peaceful. Like most of the religions, they have some violence. That's just human nature. But interpretation, okay, when you don't agree, okay, how do you come on the same page? The extremist organizations, I'm sure they think they're true Muslim. They're not lying. They really think they are, okay? And they're using the same text. So how do you come on the same page that, okay, this is not a violent context or whatever? Yes, even the Muslim scholars, they don't agree. And obviously there's violence in every religion, okay? So that's just human nature. So how do you come on the same page? Okay, we have to be, violence is not the resort. How do you come to the same page? I have more questions. Both of them, anyone.
Okay, is this working? Coming on the same page, I hate to say this, I don't know that that's going to happen. And the reason I say I don't know that it's going to happen wholesale, I should say, is that it's not just a religious issue that these people are doing these things for. You know, you can talk about religion all day long. Most of us know that you can't kill innocent people. That's not even an argument in Islam for most of us. But the people are not just acting because of a religion, and I think we get off, huh? It does make it worse, right? Well, what they're doing is cloaking themselves in religion because the people of that area use religious language. So if you want to get a revolution going, if you want to galvanize people to your side, you use the words and the culture that the people are used to. So it's not a religious issue. They're just cloaking themselves in religion. We do the same thing here. People cloak themselves in religion to do bad stuff. And because it gets other people, it gives them, number one, credibility. It gets people on their side. But there are many political, cultural, geopolitical, et cetera, reasons for why people do things. They don't just do it because they read in the book, go kill them, and they did it. You know, these people are thousands and thousands of miles away. Do you really care what people think 25 miles from you? Not even thousands. So it's not just a religious issue. And as long as we are fixated on religion, we'll never solve this issue. This issue is not just religious. There's resources over there. You think ISIS is fighting? What's that?
Religion doesn't have any role in that?
I can't understand. Well, religion does have a role. I mean, we can all become better people here, and I think if we solve things here, we'll fix it there. But I think that they're using religion I don't think that
They do use it.
Huh?
They do use it. But it's very easy to use religion. It's very easy. So
I know they're going to. I mean, people who intend to do those things are going to continue to use it. Look, people who blow up abortion clinics use religion as a basis to do it.
Yes.
Many people don't believe in abortions, but they don't all blow up abortion clinics.
They don't. Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I
so
do.
I hope this makes some kind of sense. I'm not trying to be
But
contentious.
many people do. I'm talking about people who do use religion.
What's that?
People who do use religion. What about them?
Who do use it for? To do bad stuff?
Yes, to do bad
We have
stuff.
to continue to fight with them. We have to fight against it.
Yeah,
We
that's
have
my
to
question. How?
Yeah. Well, if we know who they are, it's easy. The problem is we don't always know who they are. We don't go bowling with these people. You know, we don't know who they are. I mean, if I knew somebody was going to blow something up or kill somebody, I'd call them in a heartbeat. I wouldn't even have to think about it. If they come around us, I mean, people may have political feelings about the U.S., for example. That doesn't necessarily preclude them to doing something bad. But it's the same. We have the same problem. We don't know who these people are. You know, it's not like the majority of Muslims are doing it, or Christians for that matter. We don't know who they are. We have to work together. I hope that.
Okay.
I think your question, the way I understood was that there is a diversity of interpretations of the same figure.
Yes.
How they can come on the same page.
That's right.
That's what the question is.
Yeah.
Have a seat and let me finish it. Because we're not going to go into debate, you know.
Yeah, okay.
Have a seat, please.
I have more questions actually.
Oh, okay, later on, but have a seat. The thing is, the different interpretation of the sacred books, whether it's Torah, it's Gospel, it's the Sikh Guru Granth Sahib, or it is Islam's Quran, and no one claims that there's only and there should be only one interpretation. The diversity of the opinion is okay. Only thing is perversion. When you take something out of the sacred book and you pervert it and use it, as I was giving you example of Hitler, he was using something that some Jews might have done 2,000 years ago, and he understood it, and he's calling all Jews Christ killers. So that is his interpretation of his book. Similarly, in our religion, the same thing happens. And we're not denying that in Islam, in Muslims, they read the Quran and they pick and choose those things. But as it has been very correctly said, there is always a political motive behind them. Either they want to gain power or they want to gain territory or suburb, like ISS is doing right now. But they're using religion as a tool in their hands because it works for them very easily. So that's the way.
How do I make sure I'm not being used?
What's that?
How do I make sure that I'm not being used as a normal person, let's say in Pakistan or Afghanistan?
So that you're not being used?
Yes, if I'm a normal person, an average person in Afghanistan, how do I make sure someone is not interpreting the religion in a certain way that that person can use me? That's my question. Which is the right interpretation? How do I know a normal person?
That is an individual decision. Every person, I can't give you how you should think. I can't give you how, they can't tell me how I should think. Whatever I hear, it's up to me to make sense out of that, whether it's right or wrong, and make a decision about it. If somebody picks up the wrong opinion and works for that, that's his or her problem.
Okay, just one more
The point again, I want to make with this forum, as I said at the very beginning, the point here isn't to change your mind. The point is that education is really the more you know, the more informed you be, the more you can make those opinions and decisions. So I think that's the point.
So because of time, I have a solution. You all have our social media handles. You've already been asking. Please ask your questions. We have direct contact with the speakers. We can be the mediators in between your questions and the people you would like to direct your questions. And if our speakers would be so kind as to take time to answer these, you can send them to us via email, as we've already been corresponding that way, and we can send it to you at a further date. I do apologize, but we don't have any more times. However, I think I have more prizes, if my friends are close. I do have more prizes. Is there a Jessica in the room? Is your middle name Jessica?
I just want to say as well, with the questions that you asked, we can post them as well on the website. We have me2wehtx.com, and we also have our Facebook page and Twitter. So we can post a lot of those on social media.
Angelica is the winner. Thank you all so much for coming. Please take pictures in the back. Thank you for the 4 hand claps. We appreciate it. Have a great night, everyone.